Hey everyone, welcome back to Comerit's What's Up Enterprise podcast, where we explore the latest technology trends across industries with the leading experts from around the globe. Today we've got an excellent guest, Ian Andrews, who's coming from Groq with a Q. We're going to talk a little bit about fast AI inference today, but before we do that, let's welcome in Ian. Ian, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks so much, Dave. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Hey, could we start out and just talk a little bit about your background and how you got to Grok and how you got in this business?
Well, I've been doing enterprise technology for a long time, much like you, about 25 years in the space. I've had the pleasure of working at some really big companies like Hewlett Packard and VMware. But generally, I've worked at really exciting startups like Opsware, Astrodata. Spent a long time at a company called Pivotal. Most recently was in the blockchain analytics space at Chainalysis, and I joined Groq just about 3 months ago.
Oh, that's fantastic. So the VMware thing, I
Yeah.
did read something briefly about that. You helped them. The company was much smaller, and then you helped them with that transition to VMware. Is that what it was, or did I get that wrong?
Well, I worked for a company called Pivotal,
Right.
which we launched back in 2013, took public in 2018. We actually sold the company to
Wow.
VMware at the end of 2019. So I
Very
spent about a
impressive.
year there helping them build a new business unit called Tanzu, which was all about application modernization and cloud native platforms. We built something called Cloud Foundry, as well as the most popular
Very
open
familiar.
source software development framework for Java called Spring. And so
Wow.
we got the opportunity to work with some of the biggest enterprises around the world. Everybody from Ford to Kroger to JP Morgan Chase were customers of ours. It was a great run.
So just a few things, right, Ian? Well, also, Ian used to also have a podcast yourself. So,
Yeah, I did. I was sitting on your side of the table, and I did about 150 episodes over 2.5
wow.
years. You can still find it on Spotify or any of the other popular podcasting platforms. It was called Public Key, and it
Wow. Okay.
went deep into the world of cryptocurrency. Not so much promoting any tokens like most of the crypto content, but really looking at the underlying technology, as well as some of the more interesting kind of regulatory situations, and of course crypto crime, which
Right.
we played a special role in at Chainalysis.
Right. I know we talked briefly kind of about how podcasts worked, and I've always been a big fan of how some of these long form podcasts go now because you can kind of be open, talk about anything. And we talked about a little bit about this one, and
Yeah.
so many things happen so fast in our space that it could go anywhere. But we decided to, let's have some kind of strategy and we'll take it to there's some exciting things, real exciting news I think we could talk about. But before we get into that, I know there's going to be a lot of people very interested in what Grok does. And if you
Yeah.
could just give us a little bit about the background and the journey over there that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Well,
start there.
Grok is in the middle of the hurricane that is artificial intelligence right now. So we our core innovation is a semiconductor or a chip built specially for inference. It was created by our founder and CEO Jonathan Ross, who prior to Grok actually worked at Google and built the tensor processing unit, which is their AI CPU. And Jonathan realized at Google that at some point in time the rest of the world would catch up in terms of the urgency and scale at which they were running machine learning and artificial intelligence workloads. And so Jonathan left Google, launched Grok way back in 2016, and spent much of the last 8 years refining the chip and its capabilities. And then when the OpenAI launched ChatGPT a little over 2 years ago, it sort of woke the world up to this idea that they might need different systems to support all of this new capability that was being delivered with AI. And so Grok became kind of in the moment. And then just over a year ago, we launched Grok Cloud, which means that you no longer have to really worry about the hardware to get the benefit of it. Everyone that's listening can go out right now to grok.com and sign up for an account. get a free trial, and you can see what Groq actually delivers, which is incredibly fast AI inference with very high quality at an incredibly low price. So to give you just some benchmark numbers to compare, 10 times faster than an equivalent NVIDIA system at about a third the price and a fifth of the power consumption. So
Yeah, and I
world
go
beating.
ahead. I think that's actually really big news, especially for those organizations out there who are coming up with great use cases. We're going to get into this a little bit. But before we do, would you mind explaining for some of those people out there who may not be familiar with inference,
Yeah,
why that's even important? And then
absolutely.
we'll talk about some startups and but also big companies, big enterprise. Go ahead.
Yeah, inference is a really fancy word that means running the model. So the easiest way to think about it, if you've ever used ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic, and you've typed in the text box and you've gotten a response back, that's inference. And if you kind of imagine the world from say 2020 up until the last year or so, most of what people were doing in the AI world was training, actually creating the models. And most of that work lived, in a few academic research labs, and then some of these frontier model companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. But now that the models have gotten to a level of capability where we can actually apply them to do real work, and they're being used by hundreds of millions of people around the world, most of the actual work being done is now on the inference side. Training's big, but inference is much bigger and its growth rate is even larger. And so Grok has chosen to focus on solving that problem, which is how do we bring down the cost, increase the speed, and deliver outstanding quality to customers?
Right, because isn't it possible that if you come up with a really good model use case, that cost becomes a factor of your inference, right? This is what's it could happen to an organization.
Well, we see this every single day. So people coming to Grok where they've started on OpenAI, they've built something that works. They've got users who are excited, they like it. Their customer growth numbers are all up and to the right. Everybody's high-fiving until the inference bill arrives. And people look at the number that comes on that bill from OpenAI, and they look at how much revenue they're bringing in the door from their customers, and they realize, hey, we're not in good shape here, right? We're underwater. And then they sit down and they start doing some modeling, and they kind of add up. Well, as I add users, my inference bill goes up linearly. That's bad.
Exactly.
As I add more features that use inference, my bill goes up. And as the models get smarter, I'm using more inference.
Right.
And so what you have then is a great product that people like, they're using it, your growth numbers are up, but you're going to lose money forever. And that causes them to look around for an alternative, and Grok is right at the top of that list.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So you touched upon it a little bit, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper. I mean,
Yeah.
so the founder came out from Google and then he had this mission and a vision. So, people talk about missions and vision, but could you go a little deeper into that for
Yeah.
us so that
Yeah, Jonathan is an incredibly ambitious guy, and I think what he's realized is that we now have the ability inference running these models is actually a way of delivering intelligence and knowledge to the world. It's an incredibly powerful resource for everything from learning to knowledge retrieval to information synthesis. It has the potential to dramatically raise uh, the knowledge and ultimately the productivity of humans all around the world. But if it costs us millions or hundreds of
right?
millions of dollars to run these models, that's not going to be within reach of the vast majority of people on the planet. It becomes exclusive to a handful of, very large corporations and government agencies. And I think that,
Exactly.
that's not great for anybody, right? We want
Right.
this technology to be as diffuse as possible, because it has such power and potential. And so he's really set up Grok with a focus on driving the cost of inference as low as possible, not to seek profit maximizing opportunity for us as a company, but to actually drive towards this better future for the world, which is it's incredibly exciting place to work for that reason.
Well, and that leads us right into adoption, right? So
Hmm.
if cost is prohibitive,
That's right.
then like you said, they're a very small group now has this power of learning and processing, whereas what what Grok has put together greatly increases the total overall global adoption and deployment, really.
That's
And
right.
and that's what I think, I was so really excited to hear about this. And obviously we have developers and working really hard to bring algorithmic agentic automation, and that's a lot there, but to organizations. But at the end of the day, if they themselves can't adopt it because of cost, it doesn't do us any good. So I hear these people, you got Grok will post something in the news, and then they knew that I was going to be speaking to, and they'd say, "Hey, did you see that? Did you see this?" And of course, and I said, "Yeah." Well, lucky for me, I will get to speak to Ian pretty quick. Karen will get to ask him some of these questions that we all talk about. So I have this tendency to want to just drive this out for the next 3 hours, but we don't have 3 hours. But I do want to bring up what some of the the opportunities based on the Grok architecture that you're now being able to see, well, for Grok specifically, but also if you're able to share any big use cases for organizations or for companies.
Well, the list of use cases is actually kind of incredible. I think one of the things that's so interesting when you look at our customer base, which is now thousands of paying customers, is the variety and the fact that many of these companies wouldn't have even existed uh, 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Right? These are companies that were born in the age of AI, and their business model or the capability they're offering really only works because of AI. And so I think we're in some ways at the dawn of a new age of technology. One of the cool ones I actually just saw earlier today. They have a tool that validates whether a piece of text was generated by AI or not.
Mhm.
And my mother's a high school teacher, so I can imagine that in her profession, this is one of these tough questions that you have to be able to answer. Am I getting honest work of a student, or am I getting kind of AI fueled plagiarism in this essay that I'm reading? So it's really pretty exciting. But a couple other use cases, we're seeing everything from uh, you know companies who are using this for uh, health records transcription, and billing analysis, to video and image tagging, to more complex systems with agents replacing call center users. I mean, the use cases really go on and on.
So there's something you brought up in my own memory of a conversation I just had
Mm,
with a good friend. He's a maybe double PhD. I know he's at least has his PhD, and he brought up this is something I know you might have a thought around. So it was interesting because as he was looking into he was doing some research on a topic he knew well because he did his thesis on it. He provided a lot of work in this area, and he quickly realized that the AI was giving back information that the only way it could give that information is would have had to have drawn from his own work. And he
wow.
brought up and he brought up a good point because he asked me, he knew I did a lot of work on the blockchain side, and we had some theoretical discussions about identity and data ownership. And he asked me, is there anything that could be done where we've seen other his case is not unique. I've actually heard of this multiple times. That in the last month, this is actually the third time that I know of a team that worked on something. So one was in their doctoral support work for the thesis. The other was actually a client who they solved some things, and as they were asking AI to further solve, they recognized it. information that could only have been generated from them. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Is there a way that could we give those people some type of royalty if we could track it? Could we use
Yeah.
blockchain as a ledger? This is thinking outside of the box a little,
Well, so first, I just want to point out that Groq doesn't train models. So we run
right?
models that are built by other people. So it's not so much in the context of what we do, but it's a great question that I think the industry has to wrestle with. We've seen, large organizations like, the New York Times and some of the other major publishing houses
Hmm.
suing some of the foundation frontier model companies, really to press for what you're suggesting there, which is that we should have a royalty system and we should have usage rights contracts that extend into how the models are trained. Now,
Hmm.
the other side of this argument is that training models is kind of a fair use exception, and that there are no royalties due. And I can actually argue both sides of this. I mean,
Right,
I want creators to get paid, but also the model itself is not necessarily just regurgitating the material, but it
right.
is being improved by the material. So there does seem like there is um, some potential there for uh, the argument being made on the creator side. I have seen a couple of platforms that attempt to address this problem, actually.
Yeah, I
Uh,
actually know of a couple of projects working
yeah.
on this
Uh,
problem.
I don't believe the ones I've seen have attempted to inject blockchain into the solution, but they are being very. One of them's a news aggregator, kind of a news search service, and so they've actually gone out and signed agreements with hundreds of the news sources, and then anytime a user searches for a particular topic and a source that's cited in the response comes from one of those providers, there's a royalty paid. Um,
That's actually addressing I mean, that actually somewhat addresses my conversation I had very recently,
yeah,
so
yeah. I think on
I
the
like
case of your friend in the scientific research, that's another question too, right? Is like, we want these models to be able to do science, and so on some level, we want them to ingest all of the published knowledge of the world. Like
right,
I want AI building new drugs
totally.
and figuring out things that we don't yet understand about how proteins work. So on that case, I'm a little more maybe leaning towards the side of the AI creators of we should have open access to all this information if it allows us to improve the models.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think on the other side of that, though, it may be an opportunity that it could flag if it flagged that, "Hey, there's research going on here," and
yeah.
it's obvious that there was someone who may have initiated it,
Yep.
then that is an opportunity for I know this person in particular is very, very smart, and I think
Yep.
if they were continuing on, they would probably want his background because he actually has a background in AI,
Yep.
and in data and analytics. So,
Yeah.
um,
Google just launched a platform. I think this was in the news at the end of last week, that builds on their. If you've ever used Google Scholar to search for a particular paper
I'm
or look
not.
for all the content built by an individual, um, it builds on that and brings it into an agent framework for extending research.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
as a human scientist, you can present the AI co-pilot scientist, if you will, with a research hypothesis, and then it has a series of agents that communicate with each other and sort of bake off different ideas behind that hypothesis. Some that go off and do research and information synthesis, and ultimately they sort of compete with each other for the best ideas. It has an interactive mode, so you can actually go back and talk to the human in the loop, pose questions,
Oh, wow. That
ask for
sounds
clarifications. It,
yeah.
it's really neat. In the paper they published about it, they were able to do some, I think, novel discovery of previously discovered drugs, but new applications for those drugs, which was pretty exciting.
I have something to ask you. How, as I know, I've been told this, or we've been told this by our clients. They said,
Yeah,
"Hey, if you're not giving us information on what's coming or technology that's 10 steps ahead of where I can get from using the AI myself,
yeah,
what value do you bring?" I know this is tough. I was like, "Whoa, that's gonna be a tall glass of water for me to go. But
yeah.
how does what's Ian's top secret way to stay on top of technology and all these changes? I mean, you're very informed and I love it. This is why I'm super pumped to talk to you
Yeah.
because yeah,
Well, I'll tell you that I'm probably a little bit too much online. So yeah, time spent on Twitter. I've got one of those the feature on Apple phone where it can
yeah,
warn you that you've exceeded your time for the day. I usually bounce up against that by the end of my day on Twitter, and uh, it's just a great aggregation point of all the things that people are working on.
totally agree.
And I have the pleasure of working with some really, really smart people as well who,
Exactly.
uh, you know, attempt to keep me informed.
That's
But
awesome.
honestly, I love this stuff, right? Like I get
Exactly. That's where
excited
I'm
reading
at.
every release, right? So it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Maybe if it were a different topic area, I'd be less engaged, less well informed. But uh, it's it's uh, it's fun to
Yeah,
stay on top of it.
I'm with you. I have to turn mine off also. If in fact, I don't even think they have a setting for how much I'm on that on X. But so uh, can you share a little bit about the culture and leadership there? I mean, because
Yeah,
this is such an exciting time. What's it like over there? I know you talk a little bit about the founder, but in
yeah.
general, I mean, it's so exciting that it's got to be just
Well, Groq
it's like for me, it's like Christmas every day, and I don't work at Groq, so
Yeah, Grok has an incredibly high bar for the people that we hire. So, first thing is, I have the privilege of working with some really talented, smart people, experts in their domain, um, and I think we're all committed to going above and beyond to succeed at the opportunity that we have in front of us. Right? We're at one
yeah,
of these generational moments of change in the technology industry. It will have a bigger impact than the move to cloud, maybe as big an impact as the move to like mobile has had on humanity. And so we're all firm believers in that opportunity, and we're all going to work incredibly hard. And so uh, I think in my career, at the times where I got really frustrated, it sort of came back to working in places where I felt like the organization was kind of trying to run through mud. You just couldn't get momentum, you couldn't get any velocity. And Grok is the exact opposite, right?
wow,
Every Friday we have a demo days Friday where the engineering team comes together and shows off whatever they've
shows
done that
off.
week.
What?
And it's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
It's the coolest call.
Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
it's such a great way to end the week. I'm just pumped up at like, wow, I can't believe, they built that. We were just talking about it last week and now I'm seeing like a live demo of it. So
Wow, that is so awesome. So, can you talk a little bit about you know, um, w- what's who does Grok consider their main competitors?
yeah. Well, I think it depends on the level that you look at the industry. I mean, there's lots of people out there trying to build specialized semiconductors, and I think
Yep.
you wouldn't be wrong to say, well, Grok competes with all of those people because
Okay.
we're a semiconductor company.
Hmm.
But I actually don't think about that is necessarily the right framing based on where our customers are coming from and what we're seeing as opportunity. You know, I think you could also potentially argue that like everybody that's providing a model, tokens as a service is a potential competitor as well. But that's a
Hmm.
pretty long list. I think probably where the most many of our customers are coming from is actually leaving OpenAI because of the prices.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right? And so, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily say that we're direct competitors with them, but I think probably cloud providers, is the other place that we see most customers coming
Hmm.
from where, they start in Amazon because they're at Amazon, or they start in
Right.
Google because they're there, and they realize that they need something more than what's being offered. And Grok is a great landing place for that. But I think we have some really interesting advantages over all of these people, right? What Grok has built is a vertically integrated inference cloud. So we're very
Hmm.
specialized. We're not trying to do storage or general purpose compute. We're only doing AI inference. So we can be excellent at that capability. And because we build everything from the chips all the way to the API that produces the tokens our customers consume, we have really incredible economic advantages over all the other providers, right? So we can go faster, we can deliver incredibly high quality that's easy to use, and we can do it at very reasonable prices.
You and I briefly talked about this. This was something I was contemplating because on at the Comerit side, we dig heavily on the data side, right? So we
Mhm.
work a lot around SAP, big enterprise data, and then the other siloed types of data that might come from custom applications that they've built, some legacy stuff, or some even the bigger applications, things like Salesforce. There's quite a few things that you can combine in there for from an AI perspective. But in your solution, so in my own head, I think of data as really two forms: your hot data, which you don't want anybody to have access to, and then cold data that maybe is okay to push out to a cloud. Do you see um, anyone talking about, like, maybe this makes sense to bring in some of what Groq offers, you know, on premise, and
Mhm.
then for maybe stuff that is not so risky, the cloud works, but more of a hybrid opportunity in order to run some things that maybe you don't want your competitors knowing, your secret sauce, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And do you see any of that type of thought process yet?
Well, the concern that you raise is absolutely one that we hear from a lot of customers when they first come to talk to Grok. And the great news is we have a zero data retention policy. So, because we're not training models, we don't collect any of your data. We're not trying to use your information, your prompts and your responses to improve our product. So, you submit a prompt, you get a response, and that's gone from our systems. There's no way that we can see it. There's no way that we can recreate it. And so actually the issue that you're raising, I think is a very valid one if you're thinking about, an inference service provided by anybody who's actually building and creating models. They have a strong incentive to want to intercept and control your data.
Mhm.
And we don't have that at all because we build our own models. We're not doing any training. To the second part of your question is cloud or hybrid cloud or on premises a deployable architecture for Grok? Absolutely. So, we have, like I've mentioned a few times, nearly a million people who have signed up for Grok Cloud. We've got, thousands of paying customers who are using it happily today. But many of those customers say, "Hey, Ian, I need a little more security. I want a little more isolation." So within our cloud environment, we can offer dedicated infrastructure that then becomes single tenant or single customer running against that hardware. And we can actually extend our cloud into the customer environment to provide that hybrid cloud as well. So fully secure, single tenant, but still managed by us. So you get the ease of use and operability, and a purchasing model that is like a managed service rather than having to uh, spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars kind of acquiring hardware up front. So we can service, a wide range of topology and customer deployment needs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good I know this is gonna be a good podcast. I'll probably have many clients actually ask me a little bit about this. They may be unfamiliar. I
Yeah.
know they're, online or even in conversations, people do tend to get some confusion around Grok with a K versus Grok with a Q. So, but we're dealing with that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I know we have just a few more minutes left your time. First,
Yeah.
Ian, thank you so much and lending your time to talk. I hope you come back on again and discuss. I mean, things are moving so fast, so I'd love to be able to get you back on and share what you guys are doing out there.
Happy to.
Um, but while I still have you, I know there are some big announcements. I'd love to just hear your thoughts on some of the movement that we had this week. And every week we get movement from each of the different providers. But
That's great.
let's talk about. I know you've been fiddling around. You have some access to Anthropic's the new 3.7
Yep.
version.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on this? This is clearly a race now for so.
I think Anthropic just keeps getting better and better. Right. The Claude model has seem to have grabbed everyone's attention as being the best model for developing, writing software applications.
Hmm.
And 3.7 just seems to extend that lead. From my own experience and everyone that I've seen who's used the model and has been talking about it, it's a great kind of step function improvement of the experience that we had for the last few months with the 3.5 update, and it just keeps going. So they seem to be doubling down on their focus on software development.
So that's still a fairly big concern, I think, for developers that I work with. We work with hundreds of, maybe thousands of developers.
Yeah.
Am I out of a job? Quick, 30 seconds. Why are they not going to be out of a job?
I
Or why will they be? It's
I'm
totally up to you.
I'm extremely confident in the fact that today is the least amount of software that will ever exist in the universe, right?
Yep.
And creating software is like 10% of
Yeah,
the total effort required to maintain an application over
that's
time.
right. Yeah.
And so I love what we're able to do with these models and products that you layer on top of them, like Vercel's V0 or StackBlitz, Bolt.new. These things, Lovable.dev is another one. These things are incredible for prototyping, right? I'm not a
Yeah.
professional developer, and I
Right.
can now go and build an application. I no longer have to like sketch it out, on a napkin and
Right.
hand it to a
Or
designer
use a
who hands it off to
Figma.
a
Yeah.
team. Like,
Yeah.
I can get something that works, that is communicates an idea in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and it's pretty good.
Right.
But I think that people, when they say, "Oh, we're not going to need developers anymore," are totally missing that like
Mhm.
90% of what development teams do is maintenance and ongoing operations of
Mhm.
applications that are already deployed. And so if
Right.
we believe that the volume of software is increasing, which I think is a pretty obvious statement to make, we're only going to need more people who are technically savvy and capable with code in the future. Now,
Yeah.
will the job change a little bit because of these tools? Absolutely. I think we can take a lot of the drudgery out of it, um, and allow people to focus on some of the higher value tasks. But it's
Totally
definitely
agree.
not going away.
Right. It's just, some of the heavy lifting in order to get an ideal out first time into an application where you can start to collaborate with your developers. That's a long, arduous process.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you'll spend 6 months going back and forth. But now, like you said, Ian, you and I, we can come together with an idea and within 3 weeks have it in an area where we're really collaborating with those tiny nuances that they know how to fix, right? Because of their development skills. And I agree with you. I think it's just a different way in which we'll end up working, but we will need them deeply, even more so because there's more software being developed. Speaking of that, so Chat GBT comes out with 4.5. And what are you seeing on the 4.5 side?
Well, I think it's kind of an interesting intermediate release for the OpenAI team because uh, the announcement was made with, "Hey, this is not a frontier model."
Mm,
And interestingly, it doesn't include any of the reasoning capabilities that you see in other O1 OpenAI models like O1 or
mhm,
O3. Um, in fact, it seems like the core improvement here was not in necessarily in speed or capability as it relates to benchmarks, but
mhm.
perhaps just adding a bit more empathy to the model. In fact,
And
I've
I
seen
think,
some people suggesting that it's really purposely built to be able to handle tough conversations where you're looking for some human touch. Um, and so it's interesting tangent from where I think everybody else was racing, which was to run kind of up the benchmark charts. This one's taking slightly different paths. So I'm curious to see as it rolls out to more people. I think right now it's only available to pro subscribers, which is the $200 a month tier on ChatGPT. I'm curious once it proliferates out down to the plus and then the free tier users, if we'll see any more positive negative reactions on the kind of emotional side of the AI.
and it's actually a really good perspective from them to pick up on this, right? So these things are incredible.
Yeah,
Artificial intelligence, they can process lots of data, but still we see humans having a unique advantage in other ways. And I think empathy is a very unique advantage that we have
yeah,
when we're communicating to, like, hey, we want to build this solution, or we want to optimize this workflow.
yeah,
Without that, you do miss. I mean, it comes back with right answers,
yeah,
but the right mechanical thing may not be the right overall um optimization,
yeah,
because empathy is left on the table. Not just one aspect. There's other things going on, but it's interesting that they picked up on that. I think there will be um, you know, more move towards having communications or collaborations with AI around empathy. The other thing I thought was interesting too is when Grok 3 launched, right?
yeah,
So, well, one, I was very amazed by the learning curve at which I
yeah,
was noticing.
yeah,
It makes some interesting mistakes. I won't discuss those here today. Maybe on another call, I'll explain some mistakes that I was able to identify. But what I did really appreciate, and I think O1 has this capability too, is that self reflection mode
hmm,
where I can now understand why it tried to give me a certain answer. That's actually very helpful, because when I went back to fix it and I said, "Hey, this is where I think you got it wrong,"
yeah,
I can see why it
oh yeah,
was thinking a certain way. That to me was incredible. The other side of that was the step beyond that is it does seem to have this ability to create the response too. So a more creative response in the collaboration. So yeah, I think great stuff that's happening now. You posted something. I didn't get to go through the details yet, but maybe you can talk about Mistral AI.
yeah.
That's something that is partnered with Grok.
Yeah, very excited this week to announce partnership with the team at Mistral. They're again one of these leading foundation model companies, and they created a new model called Saba, which is based on the Mistral small architecture. But they actually fine tuned it to be incredibly good at Arabic and other South Indian language structure.
Wow.
And one of the things that's kind of interesting about how most models are trained is that they tend to default to English,
Right.
right? I mean, you've got generally American companies. Mistral is French, but many of the other model companies are U.S. based, and so I think the non-English languages have been a little bit underrepresented in the model capabilities.
Yep.
And so with Mistral Saba, you've got a world-class Arabic model, which is incredibly exciting. And that is now available in Groq Cloud. And so not only is it a world-class model, but it's running at 330 tokens per second. So incredibly fast. You can
Wow.
go and try it out today. Just go to grok.com and you can jump into the console, select that Mistral Saba model, and if you know Arabic, you can start conversing with it in Arabic. It can do translation
Wow.
from English to Arabic. It's awesome.
It's funny that, you brought this up. I know early on, some of the X posts, we were talking about what a magnificent time to have a full command over the English language,
Yeah,
because there was clearly an advantage, when I guess it's 2.5 years now, before Chat GPT first came out, there was
yep,
such a heavy reliance on your ability to prompt engineer,
yeah,
right? And so early on, I was training some people on prompt engineering, and it
yeah,
was really an exercise of how well can you construct communication in the English language,
yeah,
because the better
yeah,
you were, the more contextualized your communication was, the better response you were getting. It's
yeah,
funny, I don't purposely do it, but I realize I can be loosely accurate when requesting information now or trying to get
yeah,
something done. That's
yeah.
actually fun also. Go
If
ahead.
you look, OpenAI just published a prompting guide for the O1, O3 series of models, so the reasoning models. And it turns out that with those models, they actually discourage you from a lot of the prompt engineering tricks that we used
Yeah.
with earlier model strains. So if previously you might have said, go step by step, or think through your actions before you do your
Right.
work, or
Use chain of thought processing.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. That's how I would
All
probably
of
right.
those things, you had to know that trick and
Yeah,
be like kind of savvy to get the best out of the earlier models. But with these reasoning models, they've actually said that those tricks will trip the model up. And
really.
so instead they're suggesting you use a more straightforward sort of question and answer type style,
Wow.
which is interesting. So the models are getting better. I think the prompt engineering sophistication is lessening a little bit, or the need for
That's so wild because I literally feel like, I mean, that was like the first thing that I knew I would have really had to stay focused on
it. Yeah.
was that whole prompt engineering component of it. But
Yep.
like you said, like I'm getting way better response being almost almost not recognizable. Some of the conversation I would have, like you would never speak that way to your engineers, right?
Hmm.
So you just couldn't do it. But it seems to understand what I'm talking about. And it's really fun because I come up with a lot of creative ideas and sometimes I just want to put it all in the model and see what it comes back. And
Yep.
it does it quite well now. So in fact, my favorite thing to do, and this is probably all we have time left to do, uh, there's a new video generative model out,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. I love these things. Every Friday, I look to see who's doing what with these models and who's on top.
Yeah.
Um, so
Is
yeah, there's a new
it,
one.
it's called WAN 2,
Mhm.
WAN 2, released by the team from Alibaba in China. But it's fully open source, open weights. You can go up on Hugging Face right now and play with it. If you haven't seen the videos this thing can produce, you prepare to be blown away. The quality is unbelievable. It looks like something that you've shot on a pro high def camera. It looks incredibly realistic, and of course, this is all generative, so it's created text to video prompting, and a big step up over many of the models that are available in the marketplace today. So I think the advancements on the video side are some of the ones that are they give you that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this exists kind of moment.
Yeah.
Just like the first time maybe you saw Chat GPT, and it's wild. The pace of innovation in that space is just incredible.
I know. I can't wait as soon as the day ends here today, I'll get a chance to play with it and compare
Yeah,
it to some of the older models. But Ian, thank you so much for your time. And I'll probably we'll discuss how people can get a hold of you and if they have you know, exciting ideas that they could leverage the Groq infrastructure with. We'll
yeah,
probably put it on at the bottom of our thing so they know how to link to Groq. But I know they're going to be excited to hear what you had to say. I know I was, and I hope to have you back.
love to. That would be great. You can find me on Twitter or X now, I guess. Ian H Andrews DC is my Twitter handle. Easy way to get a hold of me. And Groq.com. You can sign up for the product and start using it today.
That's good advice. That's great advice. All right, take care.
Thanks so much.